Welcome to Creative Tien channel. Today I want to talk about vintage books for knitting, crocheting, and other crafts. One of my favorite ways to get inspiration is to shop at a thrift store and also look at their vintage crafting books. Sometimes we can get lucky and find a lot of vintage crafting books. It can be knitting, crochet, sewing, or other types of craft. This is part of the collection I have over the past few years. They are from the local thrift store. Despite the outdated cover and the look, you can find a lot of useful ideas and techniques. The older books usually covers a wider variety and different ways of crafting. For example, this is a book Complete Guide to Needlework from Reader's Digest. And the book is copyrighted in 1979. And it covers everything: embroidery, needlepoint, applique, patchwork, quilting, knitting, crochet, and so on. And they do have a lot of colored pictures, so it's easier to learn. Some are kind of unusual for me, such as this open work, cut work embroidery. That's something I never think of doing, but it does look interesting and it doesn't look that hard to make. Here is a smocking by sewing. You can see the final result. Here is a chart, and that's some examples. Maybe you're not a fan of this style, but it does give me some inspiration because we tend to forget about those techniques or think it's all outdated. But sometimes when you look back, they can be interesting and refreshing too. That's all the needlepoint, applique, and reverse applique. That looks interesting. The reverse applique. Those can be used for when you are doing your own t-shirt or modify from existing t-shirt. You can add one layer of fabric from below and have some cutouts. Here is a patchwork or quilting. And here is the basic knitting. Even though it's only a small section, you can find all the basic information to get started. That's the basic cast on, cable cast on, one needle cast on, double cast on, looped cast on. Here are some basic stitch patterns: garter, stockinette, reverse stockinette, seed stitch, rib stitch, and all the variations. And that's the bind off. Here's a basic scarf for hand knitting. Increase and decrease. Here are some stitch patterns: seed stitch, diamond, basket weave, waffle stitch. And here is the lace knitting. You can see all the stitches: eyelet, cellular stitch, lace rib, traveling vine. That's very interesting, looks complicated. The zigzag. Here is a horseshoe, cables. It's a honeycomb, trellis, chain cable. That's the multicolor. Oh, they still have the old toilet paper or tissue paper in the book, so that's interesting. That's also vintage. More patterns with charts, and they have a little legend here for description of each symbol. Here you can see they have a section about the neck. They have different shapes of necks, and then different armhole and the sleeves with the chart. It doesn't have the step-by-step or row-by-row instruction on how to knit it, but once you see the chart or the comparison, you get the idea of what to do, even though you still have to figure out the details. But I think it's a good idea if you want to know the basic name of different styles, or when you are designing your own garment. And here is the finish of sleeves, cuffs in single ribbing, double ribbing, turn back cuffs. And here there's an opening to add a button and a different style. And the borders, you can have a different finish. And how to sew up the whip stitch, stitch by stitch, and the blind hem. And how to do the pockets, that's interesting too. And they have different buttonholes. And there's a section for assembling the sweater. And there's a chart for ABCD alphabet. This chart is a square grid, so it's more for embroidery. And for the knitting, you have to have more rectangle squished grid for the chart. So you will look normal after you finish knitting. About kids' project. I know the model picture looks old and outdated, but the project still works the same. You can change the color to make it modern. And they even have socks. And I really like this top. Maybe I will try to make this one next time. I like the laced top with a more solid button as a vest. And here is a crochet section. Different stitches. The granny square. They also have a chart for different symbols. I don't think I'm ready to try the lace work because it looks like they have a lot of small details. It needs a lot of concentration. But they teach you how to do it with a needle. So sometimes you just want to add a little bit detail to your project, and you can add a little bit of lace stitch tatting. That's interesting too. That looks pretty. You can make a shawl with a tatted border. Different lace techniques, lace weaves. That's interesting. Different weaving methods. Here's a woven placemat. It has some lace work, hairpin lace. Rug making. If you have chance to find this book, The Complete Guide to Needlework, I think it's worth it just for inspiration. And they are usually cheap because it's very old. And here is a more recent book, Crochet Closet. They have nice pictures. For me, it's more for inspiration. I like to see the visuals and the charts. So you know the construction and you can modify it. Like this one, it looks simple enough for the back. And that's the front piece. It's very easy to make. If you see the final dimension and the shape and the stitch, you can figure out how to make it approximately. And because everybody has different size, so I will just modify it to fit yourself. That's another cardigan. And you can see that's a chart for the back piece, sleeves, and the front. So it doesn't look that hard. And that's a jacket. Very long. But when you look at the chart, it's not bad. It's another one. So this is the book, Crochet Closet. If you are interested, maybe you can find it on eBay. Here is a book, Harmony Guides, Knitting Technique, Volume 1. Here's the basic stitch, moss stitch, double rib, casting on, casting off. Here they have grafting, pickup stitches, circular knitting, and some of them are more interesting, like they even talk about reversible stocking stitch, reversible checks. So maybe I will do a tutorial in the future. Here is a cable. Here's a cable pattern, triple cross cable. And this one is called trellis with bubbles. Marking, tuck, ribbon stitch, stripes, wide slip stitch stripe, textured tweed, and that's a trellis pattern. I think we call that entrelac stitch now. And the Fair Isle knitting with colors. Intarsia, the picture knitting with different colors. You have to set separate balls. Here's lace with beads, correcting mistakes, and how to sew a zipper. And here are some garment styles and construction. Doorman or bedwin sleeves, different necklines, Peter Pan collar, shawl collar, vertical buttonholes, how to sew the hem. That's the Harmony Guides Knitting Techniques, Volume 1. And here is another interesting book. It looks very old. It's called Stitch by Stitch. It's a whole library of sewing, knitting, crochet, and needlecraft. I feel like in the old days, people are more multi-talented. They do a little bit of everything. They're not afraid to try, even just learn from books, because they did not have YouTube at that time. Here are some examples of the crochet. Look at that rock. That's very interesting to me. With beads. Here is about hanky edgings. And I think this is very interesting. I never tried that. You will need a very small crochet needle. It says 1.5 millimeter steel crochet hook. And the pattern looks very pretty. Here is the final product. And they have a pattern for the dress for the little doll. And that's the fillet crochet. This is new to me, but it does look interesting. You can create open work with pattern like that. Different patterns with charts. And this is the garment on the cover. And that's the chart. It looks very simple. It's just 2 pieces on the front and 1 big piece in the back. So that's something I can try in the future. And it will look nice with the lace pattern because the fabric is more drapery and it's softer. Here are more techniques. And here is a V-neck sweater. Here is the chart. I like those charts because you can use a chart in knitting, crochet, or even just fleece fabric. It's another sweater with cables. And that's a chart for that sweater. Different cable patterns for kids. That's a chart for the kids' sweater. And here we have knitting, different color. You can create your own pattern. Here is a sewing part. The basic sewing techniques. Here is sleeves, cuff, needlework, and then crochet. Look at that close. Isn't that interesting? I think it can be fashionable too if you make it in a different color. It's very unique, and that's the chart. Looks simple enough, right? Here is the baby's sweater chart. And then socks. Look at all different socks. And look at the pattern. It's pretty short. I think in the modern patterns, we keep everything complicated. But in the older books, they talk about the principle and the whole concept and the structure, so it's easier to understand and you can modify easily. Here is knitting, extra special knitting. It's a cardigan. And the last part, extra special sewing. That's also doable. How to cut the fabric. We teach you how to cut it and how to make a curve. Skirts, homemaker, curtains, and pillows. Different techniques for details. Even though they are very old and vintage, they have their charm. The bedspread and another quilt for kids. And some basic patterns. So that's this book, Stitch by Stitch. Here is another more recent book, The Knitter's Handy Book of Patterns, and it covers sweater, gloves, mitten, and hat. It's a base pattern for different sizes. This type of book is very helpful. They tell you different size, and based on your swatch, how many stitches per inch, and you can pick the right number for the basic pattern. Gloves, hat. Once you know the basic pattern, you can make variation and add details. Here is a scarf. They have a finished size, and they tell you how many stitches to cast on, how many rows to knit. And they have socks, different style of socks. Vest. They have adult and children too, so it's very useful. The sweater. Here is a child size. More charts. So that's a Knitter's Handy Book of Patterns. There are many more books, such as this one, Teach Yourself Visually Knitting. This is a second edition by Sharon Turner. And they have a lot of colored pictures. And they have patterns and show you row by row how to knit it. The color knitting section. And some projects. So if you have chance, you can go to your local thrift store. Maybe you can find some interesting crafting books and give you a different inspiration. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope to see you next time with more knitting projects.